Hello and welcome to another English 101 video. In this video, we'll be talking briefly about the rhetorical appeals. Some of them, the three that you need to focus on as you write your paper. You're working on a rhetorical analysis paper. If you're going to analyze rhetoric, you have to have some understanding of some of the rhetorical appeals to be able to do that, right? Just as a reminder, I like to keep the videos pretty short, right? So if you click modules and you look at, if you're looking at this in a different semester, it might be in a different week, right? But you're going to find pages that talk about appeals to logos, ethos, and pathos and rhetorical analysis. I would really encourage you to read those in addition to the video, right? They'll really kind of deepen your understanding of the concepts that I'm just going to move through very quickly here. All right. Okay, so the names are funny, right? When we think about the names of the rhetorical appeals that we're going to be using, logos, ethos, and pathos, they're funny because they're Greek, right? They were coined by Aristotle over 2,000 years ago, who was renowned for his skill in argument. And he developed the concepts of the rhetorical appeals as tools to understand how successful arguments work. And what's interesting is that even now, 2,000 years later, I can choose, I can find three opinionated articles, as I've done in the rhetorical analysis paper, and have you choose any one of them to write about. And all three of them have plenty of examples of the rhetorical appeals that you can write about. So it's just fascinating to me that these concepts he came up with so long ago are still relevant, right? Rhetoric, when we talk about rhetoric in English class, it's generally arguments, things that are used to try to persuade people. Doesn't have to be an article, it could be a speech, right? Or it could even be an advertisement, right? If you passed a billboard on your way somewhere today, that's a form of multimodal rhetoric that uses words and images to try to convince you of something, right? In that case, it would be to buy something. However, in the articles that you're looking at in the rhetorical analysis paper, the one of the three that you have to choose from, they're trying to convince you of their argument, right? And the rhetorical appeals are the tools that they use to do that, right? And indeed, when we think about why people create opinionated pieces like the ones I've given you to choose from, they're designed to change people's minds, right? We live in a democracy, so it matters what people think because they can vote, they can influence, lawmakers to get things done. So those pieces of rhetoric help shape public opinion. This is an outdated slide, but we are going to keep rolling. I used to have students write about censorship on social media, but that landscape has changed quite a lot. As you know, that's not the topic, right? You're writing about articles. You're analyzing an article that was developed in response to the assassination of Charlie Kirk, right? And anytime we have a piece of rhetoric like an opinionated article like that, they're always developed in response to some kind of event, right? And so for your focus, the event is the assassination of Charlie Kirk. In prior classes, it was about censorship on social media, particularly during the COVID era. Okay, let's jump through some of this, right? Remember what analysis is. It is explaining how something works. So in the rhetorical analysis paper, you are not working to convince me of things. You're not giving me your opinion about free speech or about the Charlie Kirk assassination. You are instead efforting to explain how an argument works. Which argument? Let's be sure we're solid on that, right? I keep talking about these three articles you have to choose from. Even if your picture's different, Still going to have a kitty in there somewhere, and then underneath is going to be the directions on the homepage, right? These are the three articles you have to choose from. You choose one and only one to analyze in the rhetorical analysis paper, right? Each of these makes its own argument, right? And each of them was developed in response to the assassination of Charlie Kirk and some of the things that happened after that that impacted free speech as well. Okay, so if you want to understand how something works, you have to know the names of the components and you have to write about what they do, right? And so that for the names of the components of the argument we get from Aristotle. There were lots of other rhetorical appeals that he identified, but for the purposes of this paper, you're just going to identify and write about the use of appeals to logos, ethos, and pathos. You will need 2 examples of each appeal. In the rhetorical analysis paper, you will write a full paragraph about each appeal, right? One about logos, one about ethos, one about pathos. Okay, so let's talk about the rhetorical appeals. The first one we're going to look at is appeals to logos. What do appeals to logos look like in the context of opinionated articles or other arguments? Well, you can use the word here to help you, right? Where if you look at the first 3 letters, LOG, it's sort of like logic. And so you think that helps you remember, right, that appeals to logos have to do with reasoning. Lots of students already have like some familiarity with this idea, right? Because they're smart people and they know if somebody's going to convince you of something, you expect to see some evidence, you expect to see some facts. So, for example, if I was trying to convince you that texting and driving is a bad thing, which it is, I might point to some statistics about how many people are killed by distracted driving every year in the U.S. Or I might give you some facts about how far the car can travel in the 1.5 second your eyes are off the wheel or off the road and are looking at the phone. I also might give you some examples, right, of people who had ended up having horrific consequences because they did that, right? So these would all be appeals to logos. So when you're looking at the article you chose to identify, you want to look for things like this. What are do they offer definitions of things? Do they offer statistics about things? Do they offer examples of things? The Lukianoff article has a lot of different examples in it. Okay, that is appeals to logos. Okay, but this is, one of the many, many interesting things Aristotle has given us. You need more than facts to convince somebody of something. You need to be trusted, right? Think about if you've ever had somebody, a friend that lied to you about something. It's hard for them to get that credibility back. And so when writers are creating arguments, they do things that try to show the reader that they are credible. One of the most obvious things I'll just show you, right? Because all of the articles have it. It's what's called a byline, right? So this is a very, very common convention that almost every, media outlet follows, where either at the top next to the person's name or at the very bottom of the article, they include what's called a byline. This gives you information about the author. Why do they put it there? Because they want you to see that the author knows what they're doing. This person is credible, right? He's a history professor at a very prestigious university. This is not just some random guy that they pulled off the street to write the article, right? And so the byline is included to prove his credibility, right? And the fact that he's got a background in history and in working for the public interest suggests that he's got even, some additional credibility to be writing about, free speech, public discourse, things like that, right? So that's an appeal to ethos. But then you're thinking, well, wait, I need 2 examples, right? The byline's just one, right? Well, there are other things that authors do to appeal to ethos. If you see them citing experts, that helps kind of build their own credibility. if they show you they understand both sides, if they maybe kind of sort of try to get into the heads of people that disagree with them and show they understand, that tends to build credibility because it makes them seem less biased. Right? Okay, let's talk about the third rhetorical appeal you'll write about, which is appeals to pathos. Right, appeals to pathos have to do with the use of emotion, right? And this is sort of what makes people pay attention. This is sort of what makes arguments stick. Like when you think about it, why do I put kitty pictures on the homepage every week? Because it's fun. Right, sure, and because I love my cats, but also the idea is that if you think that that's fun and cute and mildly entertaining, it creates some connection between you and I, some connection between you and the course. It makes it a little more likely that you're going to like dig into it, right? That's the hope anyway. Now, of course, the course isn't an argument, right? It's not a piece of rhetoric, not really. But having the image in there is an appeal to pathos. Images often appeal to pathos. But in the article, you're looking for words that create a specific emotional response, right? Like if somebody calls something tragic, that's an appeal to pathos. That's supposed to make you feel bad about what happened. Or if somebody includes a specific word or phrase that is designed to make the reader feel angry, that is an appeal to pathos, right? There are also, sometimes authors will insert words or passages that are designed to make people feel sort of patriotic and proud. Some of the articles you have to choose from do that. That's an appeal to pathos. And so the idea is that, pathos gives you the emotional connection with the reader when you're creating an argument. Ethos shows them you know what you're doing. Logos essentially works to prove to them that you're right or to make sure they understand, the argument itself, right? So hopefully this is a helpful overview. Of course, you need to find, when we talk about finding examples of this in the article, you need to find specific quotes, right? And then it's, if you look at the instructions for the paper and you look at the other materials in the class, it's about more than just pulling out the quote. You have to explain, why is the quote there? What does it do? you know, what impact does it have on the audience, on the reader, right? Because every line in that article has been put there for a reason. They're well thought out. Well, that's all I've got for this video. Again, I would encourage you to read the additional materials about logos, ethos, and pathos, and of course, read the assignment directions thoroughly. And if you have questions, shoot me a message in the inbox or check out my updated office hours by clicking that button at the bottom and stop by in person or virtually. Hope you have a good one. Take care. See you in the next video.